Hey everyone, welcome back to the Select Points podcast. We're continuing our series on the IPL preview for each team, and we're moving on to the Punjab Kings. So they're no longer the Kings 11 Punjab. So make sure you don't mess it up. But branding probably won't save their tournament, but it's worth a shot. But yeah, there's a lot of things to talk about here. Additions to their bowling lineup, which is probably what was the most lackluster last season, other than Xiaomi, of course, and then a few other bowlers. But uh, Richardson, Meredith, and then Milan has also been a pretty big buy. So yeah, we'll just give our 11 and then just thoughts on where they'll place in the tournament and then go from there. Yeah, make sure you guys subscribe also and pass it on to everyone, all of your friends. Yeah, so you guys can take it away.
Yeah, so for Punjab Kings, I think they made their two overseas fast bowlers last season, Sheldon Cottrell and Chris Jordan. They really struggled for Punjab. They were the worst bowling side, I think, of the IPL last season. Mohammad Shami was probably the only pace bowler that had any decent success, alongside Arshdeep, who had decent contributions here and there. So they clearly went in the auction looking for fast bowlers. They bid on a lot of them, and they finally settled on two Australian stars, Big Bash stars, but not Australian stars yet. Jai Richardson and Riley Meredith, both bowl quick. Riley Meredith is highly regarded in Australia. He bowls 150k. He's young. He has a bright future for the Australian team. Jai Richardson, I think, was the best bowler of the Big Bash, so he's got form on his side. He's a very exciting prospect. I think those two buys are very smart for Kings 11 Punjab. I see one of them fitting straight into the 11. I got Jai Richardson already in my first playing 11. Um, Dawood Milan was their other main pick. Not the smartest pick in my opinion. If there's Kings 11 strength is their top three. They do the bulk of the scoring, and they've always struggled with their middle order and finishers. And Milan to me would not merit a spot in this team when they have KL Rahul, Gale, and Mayank Agarwal in such good form for last 2-3 seasons. And Nicholas Puran as well. So unless Gale or Puran has a terrible start to their season and they need a replacement, I don't see Milan serving much role. I think he would have done a lot better in many other teams. But he was the number one T20 batsman, so they're definitely is not a bad addition to the squad. I just don't know how they'll use him tactically.
I'd
Uh,
see him as either at the non-strikers end with if you're running Perron, who usually like ends up hitting, right? And I think that anchor role that we've deemed in previous podcasts, I think that's perfect for him to play right here. I don't know where he comes in, probably around like the 5 or 4, maybe depending on how they fit
I think
their
that the
players.
difficult thing with
But
how you handle Dawid Milan in this side, and the reason that I agree with Rishi that I'm a little surprised about their pick of Milan here, is that the thing that really failed Punjab last season was their rate of scoring. Their top three were amassing runs. Obviously, KL Rahul was, in terms of raw runs, was in the form of his life. The number one problem that most people started to see as the season went on was that those top three weren't scoring quick enough. And that's hard to say about a top three with Chris Gale in it. But Rahul and Mayank Agarwal were amassing runs, but not especially quickly, which is why having someone like Puran is so important in their side, and makes me a little bit skeptical whether Milan is the right fit for their middle order for that reason.
yeah,
It
he's
seems
not a
like you
middle
have
order
too many batsmen who will take their time to get set and then accelerate. And we've talked about this before on this podcast that Milan is an excellent batsman, but needs to be surrounded by players who can really up the tempo from the word go.
I'm tired of saying this every podcast, but Milan is not an anchor. That's not. I think that's just a word where you throwing way too
Oh, I'm
loose.
not calling him an anchor.
No,
He is.
Suraj called him an
yeah,
anchor.
no, the reason I called him that is anchor in our definition should be someone who plays throughout the entire innings, essentially once they come in, right? So you
Well,
can't call like a
every
number 6 batsman an anchor.
every top
But
order batsman is an anchor. Then in
that's not true because if you have Chris
unless
Gale, he's not going to be playing the entire innings. He's not an anchor.
Chris Gale starts slow as well. Chris
He
Gale
does.
He's
his
not an
Chris
anchor
Gale
though.
is
That's
not Chris Gale is not a player who goes to expose the power play. His strength is hitting
of
spinners out of
course.
the stadium, and he takes his time. Chris Gale is actually the more of a definition of anchor than I would say a Glenn Maxwell or a Dawood Milan. Dawood Milan is a striker at 144 in international T20 career. I
You
can't.
can't call Glenn Maxwell an anchor either. I agree with that because he just comes in too late into the innings. So it has to be someone that comes in early and still plays and is able to play throughout the entire innings. And
Sure. I
it
think
doesn't
it's
really matter what
If
pace
you
they run
talk
at.
about anchor, KL Rahul last season was an anchor because he was actually batting
Yes.
the whole innings, but he wasn't even getting like 100. He would get like
yeah.
Mhm.
for one innings, he had 120 strike rate at a time. But I think that I wouldn't term that to be like an intentional thing. I don't think KL Rahul had a bad season in terms of striker. I think the problem is there was no trust in the lower order to come through. Nobody outside
Right.
the top three were in form. Yes, Puran had some quality innings too, but there was no trust. Glenn Maxwell was failing consistently. The Indian core, Deepak Huda, Sarfaraz Khan, Mandeep Singh, none of them were getting runs consistently, and KL Rahul felt like he had to take that responsibility. That to me is an anchor role. If he bats the whole innings and stays not out but gets a 120 strike rate, if Milan bats the whole innings, he's going to end up with a 150 plus strike rate, and that's a quality innings. I'm not going to call that an anchor.
Oh, of course not. Yeah, and that's why I hesitate to throw around the word anchor. I think it's pretty
Yeah.
loaded and can vary depending on what kind of context we're talking about. But I think it, to me, the Punjab lineup does need a couple of quick starters. I think Fabian Allen is kind of interesting for that reason. He's got a reputation as a pretty hard hitter of the ball. Um, but yeah, I think the top order was certainly not struggling for runs. And I think Milan would probably have a pretty similar role to what Chris Gale had last season, which is coming in at 3, getting set, and then potentially just completely turning the match on its head, because that's what he does extremely well, better than anyone else in the world right now. Um, but it does seem that their top 3 is a little crowded, which is why I think it's a bit surprising. On the other hand, I totally agree with you again, Rishi, that their 2 fast bowling picks were spot on. They really struggled with their death bowling last season, and I think given Chris Jordan's struggles lately against India, he got carded pretty badly at the death. Those picks are looking a lot better. Jai Richardson, in particular, from the time I think it was 2.5 years ago that he ran through the Indian top order in that ODI series, I still think about that. I've had my eye on him as a potential mainstay of the Australian side, so I'm very, very excited to see him back in action. I think he's a fantastic bowler.
Yeah, I think I don't. I think I agree with all your points. I still think Punjab are lacking the finishers here. Like
Mhm.
they got rid of Glenn Maxwell, which made sense. He had a terrible season with the bat, but they didn't exactly find any solid overseas replacements for him. I think Fabian Allen, I have him starting in my playing alone because he could probably be that finisher. Obviously, he's not as experienced in both international or in IPL yet, but he does provide that role. And I also have him as like the second spinner in the team. So but otherwise, you looking at 3 Indian batsmen who've not really had the greatest IPL career so far to play in the 5, 6, 7 roles. You got Deepak Huda, Sarfaraz Khan, Mandeep Singh. None of who've actually had a breakthrough IPL season yet. So Punjab are going to have to rely on them again to come good for them because they don't have other options.
To his credit, I think Sarfaraz Khan has been solid, but he hasn't had a breakthrough season. I think, to borrow
Yeah.
your term, yeah, he's never really grabbed the attention of the entire tournament. And yeah, the struggle to me looking at this squad is that there are really 5 overseas players you want to be playing here, because there's Gale, Puran, probably Milan, Richardson, and Meredith, and it's really hard to narrow that to 4. And I think
For
Milan
me,
probably
the
misses
number one
that.
concern, yeah, is exactly with that. I think so Punjab play 8 of their 14 games in Mumbai and Bangalore, so very high scoring pitches. And if you take a look after Puran, there isn't almost any batting left. If you play both Richardson and Meredith, I'm sure both of them can, swing the bat around, but I don't see them as like reliable, lower order batsmen. So if you take a look after Puran, I mean, there's literally nobody there who can really confidently bat if there's a collapse up top. So I think what that's going to make Punjab do is they have to either play Henriques or Fabian Allen in that number 7 spot, which is, I think, a bit compromising on the bowling. I think they're both handy bowlers, but when they're playing on Bangalore and Mumbai, I think those two might struggle a bit to contain the run flow.
I think Fabian Allen, he's supposed to be a bowling all rounder. So if he plays, I'd expect him to be delivering four overs consistently. I have him in my starting 11. I dropped him. I dropped one of the Indian leggies. I dropped Morgan Ashwin for him. I have Ravi Bishnoi, the other spinner. So if they do play Fabian Allen, I would expect 4 overs from him. I would not expect 4 overs from Moises Henriquez though. That'd be too much to expect. Even though
I
he
mean,
bowled pretty decently against India.
it has to be said that being a spinner at the Chinnaswamy is a difficult proposition in itself. So
Yeah, that's true.
yeah, if your name is
So-
not Yuzvendra Chahal, that is.
Or Rashid Khan. But
who are your 4 overseas players then?
I mean, I think Gale and Perron picked themselves.
Mhm.
Um, then I have Fabian Allen and Jai Richardson. I have Meredith, of course, on backup for Richardson, and I have Milan on backup for Gale. I think I would not be tinkering with KL Rahul. Overall, Gale is my top three, so I don't have a place for, and Perron at four, so I don't have a place for Milan yet in this team. I have Jai Richardson starting for now. Riley Meredith can come in for sure. I think pace bowling, it's not the greatest pace bowling attack I think in tournament, but I think Richardson, Mohammad Shami, Arshdeep Singh is definitely a decent pace attack. Mohammad Shami had a good season last year, took a lot of wickets. Arshdeep Singh had his moments here and there, and this could be his breakthrough year. It's his third season now, so this could be the year for him to really take over and become a mainstay in in this Punjab team. And then I have Ravi Bishnoi and Fabian Al as the two spinners.
Yeah, I'm pretty much on the same page there. I think you could make an argument for either Arshdeep Singh or Ishan Porel to probably be the third seamer. And I think having a finger spinner in Fabian Allen, who you could conceivably even bowl in the power play for a little bit, save Shami for a couple extra overs at the back end. Shami plus either Meredith or Jai Richardson at the death actually starts to look pretty strong. As always, it'll depend on what kind of season they're having, but I think that's a bowling lineup with a lot of balance. And I do agree that I'd probably go for Ravi Bishnoi here over Ashwin.
Can we confirm, is Shami fit to play?
I think he said he was fit. Yeah.
Okay. Because
yeah, what do you guys think about Chris Jordan potentially playing a lower middle order batsman's role? Does he have the batting caliber? I remember back a couple of years ago he was decent. He could hit a long ball, but I feel like in case Fabian Allen does not, if he can't bowl his 4 overs, then Jordan could lend some nice balance to the team.
I think that the trouble is, I mean, Richardson can bat as well. I think you have, in my opinion, Jordan just hasn't performed well enough lately to warrant being picked for his bowling. And if you are trying to pick him for lower order batting, that's just a losing proposition from the get-go.
Based on current form, I'd say like Henriques would definitely get the nod over Jordan as of right now.
Absolutely. And even that, it's hard for him to break into one of those 4 spots because, I think we've been saying so far, 3 of these spots basically pick themselves.
Yeah. The only way I could see both of the only way they could play both the overseas players, Richardson and Riley Meredith, is if because I wasn't sure about this. If Shami's not fit, then I'd be playing Richardson and Meredith because the pace attack is so much weaker without Shami, and they don't have an Indian backup good enough, so they'll have to go overseas, and they'll have to like drop Fabian Allen, Chris Jordan, Moise Ingris. None of them can come into contention. They'll have to get another Indian batsman there. But since Shami is fit, then I think that 4th overseas spot will be between Allen, Henriquez, and Chris Jordan. And I think Chris Jordan's just not in form right now, batting or bowling. He bats like 10 for England, I think 9, 10. I think
he comes in before Archer, which is surprising.
Yeah, I don't think he's better than Archer. At T20, he's definitely not a better batsman than Archer. Archer, you don't know. Maybe they just don't want him risking breaking something while swinging the bat. Maybe that's why they don't bat him.
To be fair, England also bat down to 11. So
England does bat to 11, but I don't recall Chris Jordan scoring in a long time. I don't think at a T20 game I don't want to talk about a number 8 relying on a number 8 to score runs. You just know you're not a good team then, to be honest.
Yeah, for me, the 2 players that I'm thinking are going to make a big difference. They need to have a big tournament here. Mandeep Singh, and I think Shah Rukh Khan is somebody that could just, play a good role for Punjab. Because if you take a look at the middle order, Mandeep needs to have a good tournament. Either Mandeep or I think who are some of the other Indian batsmen they have?
Deepak Hooda, Sarfaraz Khan, Shah Rukh Khan.
Yeah. 2 of those 4, I think, need to have a really big tournament for Rahul to play freely. I think if those guys are not batting well, we're going to see the same Rahul we saw last year. And that was the Rahul that was in good form. Right now, Rahul's not in the best of form. So I think he needs to have that freedom to know that, hey, my middle order can, take care of itself. I'm just going to go out there and express myself. I think Mandeep Singh, Sarfaraz Khan, Shah Rukh Khan, and Deepak Hooda, 2 of those 4 are going to be very important for Punjab this year.
Rahul's in form. He just scored 100 and 80.
In the ODIs,
We're a lot of
right?
overtime in the T20.
ODI cricket is like flat white ball to new ball. It's not that different from T20 cricket these days.
Yeah, if it has 4 legs.
Especially when it's played in India and England. Like it's basically extended T20 cricket. KL is in good form. I don't see KL having a bad season. I have him as he's my banker in fantasy. You know, everyone picks him as in fantasy. I has him as captain. His striker is more to do with the team than his own issues. There's a couple games last season where he definitely should have finished it off himself, but it's too much on him to do everything.
Yep.
Also, I'd rather have Gale opening and have Mayank at 3. I know they put Gale at 3 and Mayank opening. I had success, but I'd rather just see Gale opening and Mayank at 3.
The more time you give Gale, the more likely the game is just going to flip completely upside down.
Yeah, I don't think it's a huge difference. I think Mayank starts off. If Mayank comes against spin, he's willing to go from ball 1. I actually didn't even do that in test cricket, so I think him at 3, Gale opening is a better combo. Puran is the X factor player in this squad. I think we can all agree on that. Outside of the 2 fast bowlers, Puran is the most exciting player I think to see. He's a young talent. He's had 2 decent IPL so far, and he's already been doing some crazy stuff at the international stage. So
Puran is one of the most. He's absolutely one of the most exciting T20 batsmen in the world, period. And I think if he has a good season, there's very little that can stand in the way of these guys having a real shot with the playoffs. But like you said, Aayush, I think there's a lot that needs to come together in that middle order to make a good playoffs run. And to some extent, I think they suffer from the same thing Hyderabad does, which is that they have a lot of talent in their middle order that just hasn't had that much time really out of the middle. And I agree that their openers are going to they will need to have some confidence in the middle order. So it's going to be really crucial that a couple of those guys play good knocks early in the season.
So name change working or not? We got Punjab in playoffs or not? What is it? What do people think?
I found that it's a bad idea to bet against a name change. Rising Pune Super Giants took off just one S, and that got them a lot of success. And then obviously, Delhi went from being always the wooden spoon to third and second. So I don't know if on paper they have the best team, but I'm not going to bet against a name change. I do think we'll see something interesting from Punjab this year.
Oh, that's the real X factor. Yeah. I think I have them probably just barely missing the playoffs. I'd pick them to finish 5th, but there's a couple of players in there, and I think we've talked about them. There's a few things that need to go right for them to make the playoffs, I think. Puran being the obvious one, but
yeah. I don't like their bowling attack. I don't have them making the playoffs. I don't see that. Yeah, they're not a contender for me.
Aakash, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm predicting a 5th or 6th place finish. I think if their bowling attack can kind of replicate what Rabada and Rokia did for the Capitals, then maybe they have a shot. But right now, their batting is power packed. They'll probably win a few games off their batting alone. But over the course of a full season, I don't think they have what it takes.
I'm around the same area as well, but yeah, okay. I think you can wrap it up there. Thanks, guys. Hope you enjoyed, and make sure you subscribe and follow our Twitter as well, and we'll see you on the next one.